Hi, my name is Monet Meyer, and I'm going to be talking about pathological laughing and crying, also known as PLC. First, I will go over the basic laughter circuit of the brain. Then I will explain what PLC is and how it relates to the laughter circuit of the brain. And finally, I will connect it back to the Ramachandran chapter we all read, chapter 10, The Woman Who Died Laughing. I'd like to point out that I'm using a more modern view of laughter than Ramachandran. He took an evolutionary approach, which considered laughter a false alarm mechanism, and that's present in animals as well as humans. But many researchers look at laughter in humans being connected to happiness and humor, and that's the way I looked at it when doing my research. Laughter is a stereotyped reflex in response to a stimulus, and the stimulus can either be external or internal, such as a joke or a memory. The corticobulbar tract is the long tract of the brain connecting neocortex to the brainstem. And because laughter is such a complex activity, it requires activation in many areas along this tract. Ramachandran mentioned that the limbic system is the center for emotion. However, the actual mechanism for laughter is not based here, and is actually based in the bulbar nuclei, which are located in the brainstem at the end of the corticobulbar tract. And these are connected to the cranial nerves of the face, so they're responsible for a lot of our facial expressions and vocalization. On the opposite end of the tract, our neocortex helps us experience the world and feel consciousness. This is where we would decide what we think is funny and help us judge our situations to see if it's appropriate to laugh. Our limbic system also sends information here, giving us the feeling when something is funny or just that we feel happy. A recent study I looked at the cerebellum as an important factor in lining up our emotions, which is how we feel, with our affect, which is how we express these emotions. So in the context of laughter, the cerebellum would adjust the threshold for triggering the bulbar nuclei to make us laugh, as well as the magnitude of our laughter, depending on the situation that is decided by our neocortex. So in general, top-down cortical control via the corticobulbar tract and the cerebellum keeps mood and affect congruent. However, if something goes wrong in this pathway, such as fusion, mood and affect may no longer match up and problems can arise. One such problem is a condition known as PLC, pathological laughing and crying. And the main symptom of PLC is that patients will randomly start laughing or crying independent of mood. So it is almost more of a physical tic than an emotional response, because these people they feel normal, but they are laughing and they don't know why, and they can't stop. PLC is actually pretty common. It is present in 40% of Alzheimer's patients and 11% of all people who had a traumatic brain injury within the year. It can be caused by damage to a number of different areas of the brain, but usually either the cerebellum or the frontal lobe. If we remember back to the laughter circuit, we can remember that these are both responsible for modulating when we laugh. I will not be going over the circuit of crying, but it is actually very similar. It involves the cerebellum, bulbar nuclei, and the neocortex as well. A laughing or crying attack can last anywhere from a few seconds to a couple hours in rare cases, and this can happen several times a day for some people. I found it interesting that people can be treated with SSRIs to treat PLC, and the symptoms will completely go away. And one study I read hypothesized that this is because it raises the threshold for emotional reactions, so it'll take more stimuli to trigger crying or laughing. Now I'm going to bring it back to Ramachandran. The people he described who died laughing did not have PLC. They had aneurysms in their brains, likely triggering the signals for constant laughter on the corticobulbar tract. Ramachandran did not actually mention whether these patients experienced the feeling of humor or if they were just laughing. I think he said it was obvious they were very scared that they couldn't stop laughing, but that doesn't mean they weren't also feeling the emotion of humor. In the case of the girl laughing during surgery, she reported feeling that things were funny. And in this case, the doctor had stimulated her motor cortex, which would be the actual physical mechanism of laughter signals from the bulbar nuclei. But this was also not an example of PLC because it was congruent with her mood. In general, though, an idea that a mechanism such as laughter can be produced out of our control under certain circumstances illustrates the idea that Ramachandran writes about, that there are phantoms in our mind, the aspects of our existence that feel conscious are really unconscious, and that can be unleashed when damage to the brain occurs.